All right. I think it's time to get this show on the road. Everybody's in the room here. So, hi, everyone. My name is John Gray, and I'm the Director of Sales here at SpearTip. With over 5 years of experience in cybersecurity, I've worked closely with organizations to help them strengthen their security posture, navigate today's evolving threat landscape. My focus is to bridge the gap between cybersecurity solutions and real world business needs, ensuring companies are not just compliant, but truly secure. I'm excited to be here today. We're diving into a real world business email compromise, or the acronym, what we like to call BEC, if you're not familiar to the security world. Threats, including a case study on how healthcare organization lost $24 million. We'll also discuss how companies like yourself can protect themselves and take questions along the way. So please make this interactive. Please engage as we kind of go along here. I also brought one of my cohorts, DJ. He's a security expert, works in the Security Operations Center, has been doing it for a long time. So DJ, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, John. Yeah, so within SpearTip, I lead the managed detection and response team. So my team is responsible for protecting our customers' environment based on the data that we get from those customers.
Awesome. And I see someone in the chat mentioned something about a recording. This is being recorded and we can share this out. So I'll try to answer the chat as they come in. But let's give you a little overview on who SpearTip is. So SpearTip is a cybersecurity firm dedicated to protecting organizations from threats through proactive defense and rapid instant response. Our 24/7 Security Operations Center, or SOC, another acronym in the security world if you're not familiar with it, continuously monitors and mitigates risk, ensuring businesses stay ahead of evolving cyber threats. Whether it's defending against business email compromises or strengthening security posture or responding in incidents to incidents, we provide a tailored solution to align both operational and business objectives. Our goal really is to give IT teams the support they need while providing executives with the peace of mind of knowing their environment's protected. And we really live in the full gamut of the NIST framework, if you guys are familiar with that, between identity, protect, detect, respond, recover, and with the new one that's just added this year, the govern portion as well. DJ, anything else you'd like to add on SpearTip or kind of what we do?
No, I think you covered it well, right? I think seeing SpearTip overall really provide left side and right side of what we in the incident response world call the boom, right? The incident. So both preparing customers, actively monitor and investigate, and then respond.
Awesome. So let's dive into the introduction on kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So first off, we want to kind of talk about, what the threat landscape is kind of going in, some compelling statistics if you guys aren't aware. So the first one I'm going to showcase is, did you guys know that BCs contribute to about 50 billion in lost revenue based off the IC3 FBI report back in 2023? Yeah, that's 50 billion, a lot of money. These threat actors, this is a full-time job for them, so they do whatever they can to get in and get the money as quick as possible. Another statistic that most organizations aren't aware of is the average time that these threats are in the environment are average of 32 days or longer. So that really means that these guys can get into an environment, they can stay in an environment, and they can really watch what they're doing so they can really attack it at the time that they need to. On top of that, the average cost of a data breach is $5 million. And for organizations that have 500 employees or less, it's almost $4 million. So you really need to ask yourselves and look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, could I afford a $5 million loss if something were to happen to my organization? Most organizations could not. So that's really where we live and we try to help. Now, DJ, as someone working in the security operations center, what are some emerging BC tactics the security teams might be not aware of these days?
Yeah, so I think most business email compromises, right? Most identity attacks really focus on what we call stealing the cookie or stealing the token, right? So we see attacks where users are phished, their username and password is stolen by the threat actor, and then their token is stolen. A token is something that a computer uses to authenticate to a server, right? So if you think about the normal login process, you log in, you put your username, password in, that generates a request, let's say to Microsoft, right? That data comes back, generates a token, goes to your computer. Those tokens can be stolen, and we see those tokens being stolen more and more. And that is a really effective way to get, for example, around MFA, right? And that is why we see that so much these days.
Oh, perfect example. For some reason, my volume went down. Can you guys still hear me? Fine. All right, great. So let's kind of talk about walk through this engagement here and this case study. So this is a true life case study of an organization that we helped and really walking through what the threat threat actors are doing, whether it's research, preparation, execution of that nature. But DJ, kind of walk through the data life of a threat actor, kind of what they are doing to to target these organizations that you kind of see in a real day-to-day operations on the security side.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting threat actor, all right? And threat actors overall are interesting, right? Like it is more and more a business these days. So these threat actors, this is really the only thing they do, and they do it really well, right? If we look to the threat actor that we will be studying in today's attack story, in the attack flow, right? We look at an averaged event threat actor, right? So it is not a script kiddie. It is not someone that just sends out a little bit of emails and hopes they get lucky. We really see an advanced attack pattern that involves social engineering, that involves calling, getting a lot of data from social media profiles to pass security questions. So we see a really advanced attack, right? But it's also not a government, right? It is not what we would call an ATP, an advanced persistent threat. We're not smuggling bytes. It is still something that most people, most criminals, threat actors could do if they invest the time and the money to perform the attack.
Okay, so what I'm kind of hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong here, DJ. Uh, it, the nature of the attack wasn't we wouldn't call it advanced, but it utilized social engineering, it utilized credentials being stolen or found on the dark web, it utilized a couple different facets that made this a little bit more unique than your typical. Now, before we jump into it here, let's talk about the healthcare. Let's talk about the vertical and the size of the organization. You know, healthcare organization, over $1 billion in yearly revenue. I think they had a $15,000 monthly budget for cybersecurity. So they had the controls in place, they had the team in place. But, you know, if this attack happened to one of our current clients, DJ, what are some immediate steps that your team would have taken to try to notify, you know, kind of see this in real time before we kind of jump into what everything transpired, of course?
Yeah, so this is an attack that's really focused on what we call the SaaS identity atmosphere, right? So it focuses on getting access to an identity, getting access to an account, right? And then performing actions within those accounts. Within SpearTip, right? For the clients that are enrolled in identity monitoring, we monitor those identities and we monitor the behaviors of those identities, right? Are they logging in from different locations? Are they logging in at weird times? Do they perform activities within a user account that we might call abnormal or that we have seen in the past, right? Different IP addresses, different user agents. So that's all activity we track so that we can then say, hey, what is happening and is this abnormal?
Perfect. Well, let's do this. Let's jump into the actual what we're talking about today. Let's jump into the attack, how it started, and kind of some tips and tricks on how organizations can better protect themselves from similar situations. So let's kind of start from the top. Now, you mentioned it started with a social engineering attack. A lot of times when I'm talking organizations, social engineering can mean a couple different things. Maybe they think it's a phishing email coming in, or maybe it's a text message they're getting from their CEO needing 100 Amazon gift cards. Raise your hand if anybody's ever got those text messages. Uh, but let's really talk about the different aspects that stood out. So to me, it sounded like this threat actor, start off with finding the credentials or harvesting the credentials somewhere, whether it's through a phishing email. But then the MFA blocked them from actually accessing. So if you could walk me through what that landscape looked like and actually how it transpired, so we can kind of give everybody here a visualization of that.
Yeah, so I think the nice thing about this help organization was that they had a lot of logging in place, right? That logging allowed us to really create a very detailed attack flow and a very detailed understanding of what happened during this attack and retrace the step of the threat actor, right? So the first thing we observed the threat actor do is send out some emails to the organization. User clicked on the email, right? Entered their credentials, followed the link, entered the credentials. We then observed that with those credentials, the threat actor performed multiple attempts to get into the organization's environment, but the threat actor kept failing, being blocked by MFA, right? The threat actor then pivots and moves into a next step of the attack. What we see the threat actor do after they fail MFA is we see a little bit of time to spare. So we see about 24 hours of time pass by, and then a call is made to the help desk of the healthcare organization. That call, the threat actor requests the reset of MFA. The healthcare organization, the help desk person that picks up, right, asks certain control questions. The threat actor is able to bypass those control questions, right? So he answers the control questions correctly, and that way get MFA assigned to their phone device. So they get a text-based MFA set up. The interesting part, right, is in part of this investigation, we looked at the questions. What are the questions that the organization asked? And are these questions findable for the target, right? Because we, of course, knew in the end who was phished. So we were able to say, hey, if we know the control questions, could we do the same, right? A lot of control questions were relatively easy. For example, hey, what is the start year? What is the start month? If we think about anyone's LinkedIn profile, my LinkedIn profile shows the year I started at my organization, shows the month I started at the organization, right? So that was really not a very secure question. The name of the supervisor was another question. If you look on LinkedIn or if you look on a company website, it is often not that hard to determine the name of a supervisor, right? I don't want to share all control questions the organization used. Some of these control questions were better, right? But still, they were all bypassed by the threat actor. They were all answered correctly by the threat actor. And so the threat actor gained access to the environment.
Wow, that's interesting. So no matter the controls you have in place, it really comes down to how effective those controls are, and then the human element. We all make mistakes. Heck, I make mistakes on a daily basis. And as we get busy, humans are naturally known for making errors. So the interesting part to me is you can still think you're doing everything right and still have something like this happen. So I like your take on this. I use Sales Navigator on LinkedIn. I can go into Sales Navigator. I can actually triage an organization based off of, team lead, based off of what they're doing, their job title, things of that nature. So I can only imagine what these tractors, these bad guys can do with not only LinkedIn, but all the resources they have available as well. So yeah, very interesting. Now, after that, kind of walk through what else transpired from this, because it sounds like they try to log in. The MFA stopped him, which that's good. We always recommend MFA on all users, but then they were able to bypass that with calling into the help desk. So what happened next?
Yeah, so after the threat actor gains access to the account, right, by passing MFA successfully, they set into the Office 365 environment of the healthcare organization. And first, they just sit there, and they sit there for a little bit. And we see that very often during these business email compromises, right? If a threat actor decides that a account has value And an account for a threat actor often has value as soon as that account has access to financial information. So for example, someone in accounting, the CFO, someone in accounts payable. If that account has value, we often see dwell time, right? So the threat actor just sits there, reads with the people, reads the emails that go in and out of the email inbox. And that is what this case the threat actor did, right? If the account would not have had value, what the threat actor would have likely done is send out spam email to then compromise other accounts, right? Because the account had value, threat actor sat in the account and the threat actor performed intelligence gathering within the account. What that means is once you have access to Microsoft 365, you often have access to all the applications within Microsoft 365. This organization was very SharePoint heavy, and therefore the threat actor was able to use this account within SharePoint and start searching for files, right? The threat actor first searched for file names such as, hey, check, account, HAH information, bills to pay, those kind of search terms, and then transferred to looking for passwords. The threat actor was able to find a file, an Excel file, in the account that contained passwords, right? So that is how the threat actor got into the next step of their attack.
Reminds me of a story of an organization that we were working with, DJ. I'm sure you remember this. Oftentimes, we help organizations kind of determine if they've ever been compromised before in their M365 environment. That consists of live data, user behavior. It's actual data that drives this assessment. But similar to this organization, healthcare organization, not as big, but still, have to have the compliance needs and the security needs. And correct me if I'm wrong, DJ, but I think within 24 hours, we identified a couple user accounts that had some remnants of compromise. And basically what that means is our guys investigated and we found some rule sets being set up that were, showcased that these accounts have been compromised. And typically they're unnamed rule sets that are forwarding invoices or forwarding things externally. So within 24 hours, we identified a couple accounts that had already been compromised at some point in time. Within 2 days, we actually were in the middle of a phishing compromise. And how this transpired is one user got a phishing email similar to how DJ explained. It was a Microsoft login link. Through that link, the threat actor was able to gain access to that user account. As we're identifying this anomalous behavior, and DJ, you can attest, your team actually saw that in real time and then saw that threat actor actually forward that spam email internally to try to compromise other accounts, like you mentioned, the valuable accounts. What I thought was really interesting was your team taking the proactive approach. Some of it is reactive, seeing the anomalous behavior, but what your team did was super impressive to me. Being able to identify that phishing URL link, blocking that on an organizational-wide block. So even if someone got that phishing email, that URL would not be in there and they couldn't actually access it. So from this transpire, one account was compromised. We actually went in, pushed MFA, reset the password, so we gained back access to that account. But 15 other users clicked the link. And what was really identifying to me is if we would not have been the proactive approach and blocked that link from accessing internally, there would have been 15 other users compromised, and who knows what would have happened. But I really think that's the unique approach where it's a little bit of reactive but proactive to help minimize these small events from becoming major incidents for organizations. So super compelling there. Now, as we're kind of walk through this, it sounds like they were able to get information to a login, but how'd they get $24 million? I'm still not. I still need that full picture there, if you don't mind, DJ.
Yeah, so I think the interesting part here is, right, you got to imagine this is a billion-dollar healthcare organization, and what healthcare organizations do is process insurance claims, right? So remember, our threat actor is in SharePoint. In SharePoint, they search for passwords and they find an Excel file with passwords, right? And this is where we see how advanced our threat actor is, right? We see that the threat actor reads through that files of password. They must have read it because they used the passwords to successfully log in somewhere else. But we see them not just say, hey, we got some passwords, cool, we will look at the next thing. They said, how can we leverage this to gain money, right? One of the passwords stored in the Excel file was information to what I will call a health insurance clearinghouse, right? So the healthcare company would make a health insurance claim to the health insurance clearinghouse, right? They would make the claim to there. If the claim was verified, the health insurance clearinghouse would then pay that claim out to the hospital. The credentials the threat actor found were the credentials to that health insurance clearinghouse. So the threat actor was able to log in, was an unprotected portal, right? There were no secondary things, MFA in place, things like that. So the threat actor could just log in using the username and password found in the Excel file. And once they were in there, all they did is change the bank account information. So they logged in, they changed the bank account information from the bank account of the healthcare organization to their own bank account, right? And then every time the health insurance company received payment, it was wired to the threat actor instead. And in that way, over about 45 days, the threat actor received $24 million in payment to their account.
Wow. And did you touch on it sounds like there was multiple avenues for this to kind of be identified and at least look investigated in, especially with this organization having a security team. But did you tell us how this was identified? I think you mentioned it was identified by the accounting team. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, so I think there's multiple steps, right? So first of all, it is interesting that if you use a vendor that processes such large amounts of payments, that there were no secondary security controls in place, right? Um, I would recommend that, right? If I know someone would process $24 million in payments, if I log in somewhere, right, I would make sure that has MFA and enforce MFA with the vendor. So I think the company could have done more there from a security perspective. Like you said, they didn't notice it, right? The team here that raised the red flag and said, hey, something is wrong, was indeed the accounting team. The accounting team said, hey, we have been making claims to this insurance provider and we haven't gotten any money from them in the last 45 days. We made about $24 million in claims. Where's the money? And the health insurance company said, we don't know. We've been making payments to the bank account number that is in linked to your account, right? And when they logged in, they said, hey, that's not our bank account number. What happened here? And that is when we got engaged and helped the organization investigate and remediate.
Wow. So looking at it at the total picture there, it doesn't matter the amount of money you're spending on security. It doesn't matter, the controls you have in place. It really is about the people, the process, the technology, and then really auditing yourself on that. And kind of what I like to describe is when I talk with organizations, 9 times out of 10, they always ask me, I want to know what I don't know. And security is one of those landscapes that the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. Shout out to Nikola Tesla for that quote there. But so oftentimes organizations are looking to us to help them guide them where they need to be. And really, security is not a one size fit all. It's about improving the process that you have implemented now and building upon those. Similar to Swiss cheese, you have one piece of Swiss cheese, you have a whole bunch of holes in it. So you have gaps in that. You add another layer of Swiss cheese to that, it covers up the majority of those gaps, but you still have gaps. And that's why security is defense in depth, or the layered approach that we take is once you have 5 to 10 pieces of Swiss cheese together, the holes are filled up. And that's really what a good security practice looks like. So very interesting that there's a couple takeaways with this and organizations to, hey, refine your processes, excuse me, and really build upon what you're already doing. So
So I think, right, looking at this full check chain, I think the organization did some things well, right? They had relatively advanced methods of MFA enabled. Those advanced methods of MFA were able to stop the initial attack, right? The help desk person that picked up the phone at the healthcare organization followed the protocols in place. They asked the right questions. So they did well, right? After a review of those questions and after talking with the organization did change the protocol. They're now asking other questions really related to internal information, in addition to a confirmation to the supervisor, right? Meaning that the supervisor has to approve the re-access of an account, right? So the supervisor has to say, hey, yes, I do believe that this is Tony and Tony is locked out, so please allow Tony in. So we saw a change in protocol there, right? I think you spoke a little bit about policies, right? I think this is a large healthcare organization. Of course, this organization had a policy that says, please do not write your passwords down. Please do not store your passwords in unsecure places. No one in that organization could show us or tell us we have actually enforced this policy, right? And I think that Excel file of passwords existing is a great example of a policy was in place, but a policy was not enforced and it was not checked if the policy was actually followed. I see a question come by from Mike. So Mike, yes, IPs played a big role in that, and IPs helped us identify what access was likely malicious because we knew what the IP addresses were of which our specific user was supposed to log in. What really helped is tracing this from where we know something went wrong, right? So we know that the bank account information was changed. Only a limited number of users had access to change the bank account. So we first looked at who has access to changing the bank account. Then we looked at the login logs from those users and we said, hey, this person logged in the most recently to this portal. That was also then the person that was compromised.
Yeah, great question. and please, everybody, if there's other questions, we'll have a Q&A at the end of this, but please interact while we're talking. Now, putting my sales hat on, I'd love to sell as much as I possibly can on stuff like this. But let's be realistic here. Organizations have a lot of investments already in security tools. And in your case, DJ, what are some things that organizations can do that's not going to break the bank or not going to force them to, buy a $300,000, cybersecurity package? Kind of utilizing the tools that they currently have, or maybe adding just a couple tweaks to what they possibly could be doing.
Yeah, so I think the very first thing, right? I'm going to assume for a little bit of ease of this conversation that most people use Microsoft. Google has very similar controls, but Microsoft has some very advanced controls available depending on your licensing level, right? Exploring your settings and exploring those security settings, maybe getting advice from an expert is really something that can pay off because there is a lot of settings that can help minimize the impact of these business email compromises, right? Limiting how apps are allowed into your tenant, limiting how guest invites are allowed into your tenant. So those kind of things is something that you're likely already licensed for, that with a little bit of help or a little bit of research, you can really establish stronger controls with.
Yeah, that brings me to, we help organizations a lot of times. I call it hardening their application. Because what we often see, and Microsoft's getting a lot better at this now, but they're not, secure by default. Before a couple months ago, Microsoft didn't have, if you set up Microsoft by itself and didn't log or enable logging, then you wouldn't have any logs, like you mentioned, to even see what happened. And I know oftentimes we organizations come to us when they have something happen and they say, hey, we want you to let us know what happened. And they don't have the proper information for us to give them the ammunition to better protect themselves. So we oftentimes help organizations with the configuration process to be more secure based on their company's needs and business goals, of course. On top of that, how can companies detect if their credentials are already exposed on the dark web? Is there any resources that they could use? Kind of walk me through. I know this attack, it was siloed through a phishing attempt, but what are some things that organizations can do to try to, minimize the impact of users having information out there, stuff like that?
Yeah, so I think first of all is knowing a little bit of what is out there, right? We know that threat actors scrape breach forums, right? Large databases of breach websites, sometimes with plain passwords, sometimes with hashed or salted passwords even, right? But threat actors love that information because they know that users often tend to reuse usernames and reuse passwords, right? So that poses a danger for organizations. So knowing when your users are compromised, uh, uh, and asking them and checking with them, hey, we know your target account was compromised. Did you use that same password to log into the VPN or that same password to log into your Microsoft? Can be very useful for you as an organization to know. In addition, I think not all organizations yet are monitoring their identity service, right? So to me, that means a lot of people have AV installed, a lot of people have EDR tools installed, right? But the identity service, so that service that leads to business email compromise attacks, so account takeovers, right? Especially in SaaS applications, is often not monitored, right? And there's a lot of indicators there that we know are malicious that could really stand out if you're looking for it.
Yeah, it brings me back to that human error, and you know, you don't want to. I don't want to paint a picture that humans always make mistakes, but I mean, come on, ask my wife; she'd tell you I make more mistakes than I don't, but I try to learn from those, right? So realistically, it's I think what you're saying is having the proper controls is super important, but really having the security expertise behind those to actually identify things, advanced attacks like this in multiple stages. So, not only making sure that you guys are utilizing what you currently invested in, but having either a dedicated internal team or having a dedicated partner to really be that security expertise. So when something gets missed, because it's going to get missed, it's inevitable. Then you have someone backing you up on that. You have a team of security professionals that you can really leverage. So I like that concept very well. Now, outside of monitoring, outside of MFA, you're security operations specialist. What are some other things that you would recommend organizations do? And we can go to the next slide here, team. And let's talk about. I know you're a big fan of security awareness training. Being able to enable your team to identify these things in real time. So before we get to DJ and start asking him some more questions, let's have our users in. Let's have everybody in here look at this email and put in the chat where are some areas that you would see this to be a malicious email in your environment, if you don't mind. We're going to put a poll up here. And this is a screenshot of a legitimate phishing email from an investigation that we did. We did have to black out some things there, but where are some indicators of compromise that you would see in this email that would drive your suspicion, or maybe not drive your suspicion at all? Urgency is a big one. Yep. Domains. Okay, good. So we got some security people in here. That's great. Security focus is the big thing. Perfect. So we'll leave that up, and then Caleb, go ahead and let's kind of see the indicators of what we as a security professionals are going to be looking at for compromise or a phishing email coming in.
Yeah, so I think to me, a couple things stand out to this email, right? I think the first thing, and I know it's a little bit hard to see on the screenshot, at least on my screen it is, but is the domain, right? If we look at the first part of the email header, so that first from box, we see that the domain ends in onlines.com, right? So there's an S behind the online piece. If we look at the second from line in the screenshot, right, we see that it is online.com. So what the threat actor did in this business email investigation case, right, in this business email compromise case that we investigated, is they registered a new domain, that domain having an extra S at the end. So it looked to in this case, the VP of finance, right, that the email domain was the same, right? So the VP of finance never saw that extra S. So they used that, right? I think the second thing that everyone or a lot of people on this call saw very well is the sense of urgency, right? The sense of urgency in this case is interesting because that sense of urgency truly existed, right? So this was a business email compromise case in which about $400,000 of payroll was wired from the company to the threat actor instead of from the company to the payroll company. As you can see in this email, it was October 30th. October is 31 days, right? So the payment actually did have to be made that day to make sure that payroll was funded. But the threat actor really used that, right? And they said, hey, you only have 2 hours left. Please pay now. Please pay to the bank account, right? If you look at the whole email chain, and I know we don't have the time to go over the whole email chain, this was the very first time that a drawdown wire was mentioned, right? Or that a wire was mentioned as a wire coming from the company that initiated the wire to the payroll company. Before that, it was always like the payroll company will do a drawdown, right? So they will draw the money from your account and in that way fund payroll. By wiring the money, a lot of extra risk was added because in the end, they wired it to the wrong company.
Yeah, that's it's kind of like Murphy's Law. If it could happen, it did happen. The bad portion, especially this one. So this is great. This gives us some great feedback, and people in the chat, please. Let's start with some questions, and we're about to end this on how we can help organizations like yourself. We do offer a compromise in 365 compromise assessment. So if any organization would just like to know if, hey, I'm not sure if any of my users have ever been compromised, or if or would like to get some user behavior data on uh, on what my users are doing, what they're sharing, and if there's any remnants of compromise, we could definitely offer that support. I highly recommend any organization, if you have a security team or you have, Intra ID, and you can look at these logs and have the know for it to do so, you go do that. Do your own investigation, but you do have a team of security experts that can help you at any point in time. SpearTip being one of them, and go from there. Now, DJ, anything else you'd like to add to that before we open up the room for conversation here?
Yeah, I think this Microsoft 365 compromise assessment is really interesting, right? Because it provides, in basics, really three things. So it provides 30 days of cloud monitoring, right? Which is SpearTip's identity detection and response module, looking at SaaS applications and looking at, hey, is something happening within your organization? The second part it does is a lot of threat hunting, right? So, hey, is there applications? Is there inbox rules? Is there any user agents? Is there anything in this tenant that tells us that an account has been compromised in the past? The last part we then do is look at the settings within the environment. And we look at these settings and we say, hey, are these settings truly as secure as they can be? Or can we make the organization more secure by checking some checkboxes, enabling some settings, and in that way help the organization?
Yeah, that's a good touch point. 90% of the organizations that we do these compromise assessment for have been either compromised in the past, or, as we noted earlier, are in the middle of a compromise right then and there. So that's very interesting. Well, we've got about 5 to 7 minutes left, but we want to open up the floor for some conversation, answer any questions you guys may have, and give us some feedback on if this was informational for you guys, and things of that nature. So let's go ahead and open up the chat there. So, what are some questions? What are some things that we could answer for anybody that's still here? I think we have a little delay, so we'll get to some answers. No questions. Any comments? Was this webinar informational for everybody that was attended? That's one question I had for you guys. Awesome. Great. Thanks for joining, Mike. I appreciate you. So I'm glad this was informational for you. It's always good to, I call it audit, but yeah, be extra cautious, especially when we're talking about enabling multiple devices, especially for accessing MFA. We, similar to a compromise assessment we did for an organization, we were noticing this same account kept on getting compromised, days and days after. What we found out was that user had 5 different devices enabled for MFA, which essentially means that any of these devices could process the MFA token and give them access. So from that, just a little bit of knowledge, we actually, removed all those devices and enabled just one device for the MFA bypass there. So great question or great comment, and I appreciate you joining, Mike. Well, all right. So definitely informational, helpful. Thanks. Great. Perfect. Thanks for joining as well. Kentucky, sorry if I butchered your name, but thanks for joining. I appreciate that. Yeah, Mike, we could definitely help. I got your email, you got mine, so let's get in contact there. We'd be more than happy to help with you guys on that. Awesome. Well, speak up or forever hold your peace. We'll let everybody get back to it. I know we appreciate everybody joining us here today, giving us 45 minutes of your time. And if there's anything that you guys would like, any more information, please reach out to SpearTip, and we'll be sending out this video to all the people that joined today. So appreciate your guys' time, and thanks for joining, and look forward to talking with you more in the future.
Thank you,
Cheers.
guys.